Hi and welcome back to part 2 of template development number 2 in parallel line. Okay, so we have the plan or top view on, which we've divided up. We have the front view that, if you can imagine this being a cylinder sitting here, we are going to roll out to the right. Okay, this is a rolling out type of technique. Okay, so what we need to do is to put these lines on. We're going to go to polyline and click polyline. Come back down onto the screen. Okay, so polyline, come back down onto the screen. Make sure you've got your F9 key on for the snap and come through to this bottom edge. So click on the bottom right hand corner and drag out a line around about 3, maybe 4 times the width that you see on the screen there. So that's about 2. So that's around about 4, about there. Okay. So once you've got the line there, you can right click it, enter it, and that will just leave the line where it is. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw one line from there to about the same length as this one, and then I'm going to copy it upwards. That means that each respective line will poke out a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. It's not going to interfere with our pattern. So I'm going to hit the polyline command again. This time come down to that cross section, that intersection there, and left click. Now I'm going to bring that line out to the right to around about the same length as this one there. Once I get my green line shooting across the screen, I'm going to left click. Okay, so now I'm going to copy this line up. I'm going to copy this line from its intersection point to every other intersection point up the frustrum. So I'm just going to get a little bit closer, use my pan command, and then go up to the copy command. And remember, it's in the modify section midway down on the left hand side. Copy. It says to select an object, so I left click the object and it goes blue. I want to come over to the point of intersection. If you have any problems with your snap, hit the F9 key. It becomes smoother. And then left click on the end point, which is the intersection between those lines. You can see now that I've got that line ghosted on the end of my crosshairs. I'm now going to drop it at each point of apparent intersection between the frustrum and these upward developed lines, which denote the sectional view of the circle, and one towards the very top there too. So I'm just going to pan this thing across so we can see the whole pattern. And like I said, these lines go off, but they're actually past the end of where we wanted to develop our pattern to, so we're fine. The last thing we're going to do, or last of a few things we're going to do before we actually can just develop our pattern out, is to put a starting point on. And we don't normally use the side of the object. We like to keep that pristine so that we define where the object is, or where the edge of the object is. And then I'm just going to click on my polyline. Remember, I don't have a snap on right now, but it doesn't really matter. And I'm just going to click above the top bunch of lines and below the baseline. Now, like we were saying, we've developed this thing to be 1.5 inches, and the formula for working out what the circumference of a circle, or the whole wraparound of the circle, will be is pi times the diameter. Now, if you go up to this top bar whilst you're in the home menu and you go across to the right hand side, you'll see one of the sections named utilities. In the bottom part of this, there is a calculator. And let me just clear all this garbage off that was on there before. Okay, this is apart from the first take that I did. Okay, so normally when you use the calculator, we would do the pi times the diameter. So let's put the diameter in at 1.5, and then we're going to times that. So we have to hit the little star. Okay, that's the times. And then we're going to put in pi. So we just click the pi button down here. Okay. Oh, we got pi for some reason. I don't know why we got pi. But we got pi. Then we hit the equals button. And you can see that we've actually got 4 0.7123889. Oh, that's a hellacious number, but we could use it. So I'm just going to highlight it over by dragging my cursor across it. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight it like so. Do Control C, so you hit the controller, hold it down, and hit the C button. And now when I'm going to do an offset, because I'm going to offset this line that way, I'm just going to click the offset command, which is lower right on the modify menu. Okay, and then down here I'm going to click the command bar, and then Control V, which is the paste command. Okay, so once that number gets pasted from the calculator down to here, I can hit the enter key, and you can see my cursor turns into a square. That's the selection square. So once I get over there and it illuminates, I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to move to the right, and you can see that if I go to the direction I want it, it's now going to put the secondary bar on. So I click to the right of the one that I selected. So if I go to the left, it's going to swap sides, but it's just off the screen. If I go to the right, it's going to put it direction I want it. So I left click, and now that blue line disappears, and I've got two separate lines up here. Now, the next thing to take into account is we've divided that circle into 12. So we now need to decide what the dimension is to divide the distance between the left-hand side of the pattern and the right-hand side of the pattern. We have to divide that length into 12. And up here, and let me click on the, it's important that I click there right to the right of where the number was that come out when we done the 1.5 times pi. Because now I want to do that slash mark on the top there, which is really the division. So I'm going to do 4.7123, etc. divided, and I'm going to enter 12 and then enter. And it's going to come up with a number that is that big number divided by 12. So I'm going to wipe over that again. See if I can get it so that it will hold it. Weird, it doesn't appear to be one to stay on there, but I'll just go from left to right and it works. Typical, right? So I'm going to Control C, so that means I copy it. I'm going to get my offset up again, come down there, you can see the last number we entered in, and it rounds it anyway. And I'm going to Control V, and that puts the 0.3927 in. Oh, I guess that will round to. And then hit enter. Right, so it wants the offset. We grab this left-hand line, move it to the right, click, left, and left click, and left click. So each time you select the object and you click to its right. Select the object and click to its right. So now we're stepping this thing across the screen until we fill the whole of that pattern up. Nearly got it, and one more. Okay, so that is our distance now divided by 12, and you can count in between these spaces here. That's 6, and you can see that's half of this pattern, so we're good. We got 12 up. So at that point, we can get rid of the calculator. We don't need it anymore, but that is an effective way of doing calculations and just having a calculator in on the screen whilst you need to divide things and stuff like that. Okay, so this is our pattern. This is going to be fairly precise. We've got our divisions, and now we've got our frustum lines. So the last thing to do is to go up and click this downward caret, and then select our nice bright red, which I tend to do all the time, as you probably remember. And now I'm going to grab a polyline, and we're going to look at putting our welded part, which is going to be the lowest, because we all want to keep the welding to the shortest distance we possibly can, or our sticky line if you're going to make it out of paper. We're going to start at the bottom and then work our way up and then come back down the other side. So I'm going to go where the bottom of that frustum is. So I'm going to go across there to that point and click. Now, as we work our way around this, we're going to go across one and up one, across one and up one, across one and up one. And then we get to the very top. We still keep on going across one, but we then come down one and down the other side, etc. So I'm just going to go across and up, into each one of these intersections. You can see it's starting to level off now, and I get to the top. So I still carry on going around, but I can now come down one, then down one, then down one to each of the intersections in turn. And you'll know you've got the right number of intersections on there when it starts where you finish. Okay, so I've just finished right on that bottom line. It started right on that bottom line, and you can see that I've just let go of the line. Now I could have kept hold of it and brought it all the way down, but I want to do something different with this line. If I zoom in towards the top there, you can see that this whole top section is fairly peaked. Naturally, it should be curved, I guess, if you would fit it correctly. So we need to fit this curve a little bit more accurately, but we want to keep these points that we developed out. It's just that you can see that all of these lines is going from point to point to point. You could make this finer by making it 24 divisions or 48 divisions or whatever. But generally, don't want all that work. We just want to curve this line. It is a polyline, so we can do something to it. So let's left click that line until we get those little dots, the little blue grips on. And then we're going to right click and come down to where it says polyline on the menu. And now you can see where it says curve fit. Watch the top, that point at the very top as I click that line. Can you see how it's curved it? It's done the best fit going through those points, and you'll find it will only really work properly, and I'm only thinking of the sides here, because once you that line down there, you might end up with a big bulge factor around there as it tries to even itself around. So if you just put this top section on first and then bother doing the bottom part of the pattern, you'll find that you'll get a decent looking pattern. But from there, we simply grab the red polyline again, come from there, go down to the baseline, across the base and up the other side, and that is our pattern completed. So that's how you divide up a shape that has no visible sides or measurable sides. You have to basically develop points in between them. So, and you'll also see that all of the development lines are indeed parallel with one another. So it immediately identifies this pattern as parallel line development. Okay, hope you've enjoyed this one. I'll see you in the last of this section, which is exercise 3.